Well, the holy grail is how do you acquire the most customers at the lowest acquisition cost, right? That's what I think that is at the cornerstone of everything that we're looking for, right? Because once you figure that out, you can just ramp up that activity. But it's hard to get there, right? You have to be willing to try different things. You have to be willing to make mistakes. But where you can't make the mistake is in the initial strategy.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Life Inner Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome lives. I am joined by my co-host, my ever-present co-host, my reliable, my loyal, my...
Continue. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm out of words here.
You can do it. Just keep going. You got more.
Right. What's up,
That's
man?
It. All right.
That's all I got.
Well, listen, I'm excited about this episode because we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's marketing.
Yeah. Dude, this is a great conversation.
Yeah, and it's a great conversation. The fact is that marketing is one of the most important things for any business, yet most people kind of put it aside or drop it when the times are tough and things like that. But this particular guest, I think, has dropped some really cool nuggets that we can implement in our businesses.
So we're talking with Amy Anderson from Wild Coffee Marketing, and she's worked with huge brands, medium-sized brands, and businesses of all types, and she has some real gold nuggets to give in this episode. Let's jump into it right now. Here's our interview with Amy Anderson. Hey, Amy, what's up? Welcome to Life Inner Show.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
I am super excited you're here. We just started talking before we started recording about your business and what you do. For our listeners who are not familiar with you, like tell them what you do.
Oh, sure. So I'm the co-founder with my business partner, Solomon Wansier, of Wild Coffee Marketing. And contrary to the name, we actually don't market coffee shops or anything like that. It was actually a plant growing outside my house in Miami while I was writing my business plan. And it's this native plant that kept growing over the window, and I'd have to cut it back with a machete, and it was beautiful and shiny. And I thought, what a great metaphor for a marketing consulting firm that I was trying to scale while we were trying to scale the businesses of our clients. So we're a boutique firm with 20 employees in 6 different states, and we are the outsourced marketing team for some great national brands and emerging brands as well.
That is awesome. So why marketing? Like, what was it about marketing that attracted you?
Because I graduated.
That's the easiest thing to do, right?
Oh my gosh, no, because I was directionless coming out of college. I went to UNC Chapel Hill. It was the early 90s. I studied art history and English. I had no vocational mind. And now as the parent of a college student who's already looking for internships at 18, right? So different from where I was. I thought it was interesting and creative and started at 17 magazine in New York City when I went and interviewed with them. So, it's been an interesting path to start without a lot of direction, without knowing what I wanted. And it was sort of a process of elimination as I went through 10 years in Manhattan after college, working at big brands and understanding what I liked and what I didn't, and what worked for me.
So 2 things. First of all, I actually applied to UNC Chapel Hill as well as an undergrad. I did not get in. So you must be brilliant because they only accepted like 1% to 3% of out-of-staters. and I did not make the cut. And so that's the first thing.
Well, there was a whole another reason why you didn't get accepted. I don't think it's, I think you're like down here. That's why I didn't think
but I'm going to give the credit to Amy. And then secondly, 17 magazine was actually one of Peter's favorites.
I knew as soon as I saw him, I said, he is an avid reader.
Yes.
Right. You let the cat out of the bag. I see how it is. I thought it was just between you and me. Okay, fine. Not telling you any more of my secrets.
So that's amazing. So, okay. So, and when you were working for these big brands, was that where your focus is in the marketing most times?
It was. So I started in print, and it was problematic for me because I'm working at this magazine and we have subscription numbers and readers per copy, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of that really made sense to me because I was thinking, well, how does Calvin Klein know that when people see their ad, they're buying product? And I just, the data wasn't there for me. And granted, this is a time at 17, we didn't even have email yet. So that's where I was in my business career, to show you how long I've been doing this. So then I actually went and worked at Calvin Klein, and I worked in the broadcast department. So I was buying between $70 and $100 million a year of broadcast. And that was, at least we had radio and Nielsen ratings. So I felt that it was a better sort of data-driven solution. And you'd know how many people estimated listened to the ad or saw it on TV. So it made more sense. And then the internet emerged. And Calvin wanted to put video everywhere. And this was the time, remember, with our dial-up modems and the noise?
Gosh.
Yep. You've got mail.
I was actually using an AOL, browser and messaging. And he's like, let's get all of this video and shoot this. But it just wasn't built for that. So I went to a pure digital play, which was NewYorkTimes.com. And I was part of the original team that launched it at 2:00 in the morning, mid 1995. So I've always been sort of seeking solutions that you could prove the efficacy of what you were doing. Yeah. And that's very important now with this firm that I co-own with my partner, which is what are the 5 KPIs we're tracking for our clients? How are we making a difference? How are we moving the needle? And it's made us very effective and allowed us to grow over the years. But you can't market for marketing's sake anymore with all the data that's available to you.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because one of the things that I've seen, and by the way, I've felt a lot of this. I've talked to other business owners who experience the same thing. There's 2 frustrations with marketing. One is like, gosh, I don't know what to do. It seems like this black hole of money that I'm just throwing money at, and I don't know if it works. And how do I even know if I'm getting clients? And it just seems like, people tell me I have to just, it takes 7 contacts or 15 contacts, and how many mailers do I have to send out? How many ads do I have to post? And it seems like a really point of frustration for a lot of people. Talk to me a little bit about, like, how do you know, number one, what does how is it working? You mentioned KPIs and metrics. Like, let's talk about how we know it's working to begin with before we even talk about like what's the best kind of marketing and that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, the holy grail is how do you acquire the most customers at the lowest acquisition cost, right? That's what I think that is at the cornerstone of everything that we're looking for, right? Because once you figure that out, you can just ramp up that activity, but it's hard to get there, right? You have to be willing to try different things. You have to be willing to make mistakes, but where you can't make the mistake is in the initial strategy. It's like sailing and being 2 degrees off course and going for too long, and you end up in Scotland versus South Africa, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, to have that strategy. And I think the root of that is your position in the market. And I don't think a lot of, especially smaller businesses, really take the time to say, this is my competitive landscape. Here are the competitive alternatives to us, right? If we didn't exist, who would our customers use, right? Mm-hmm. Then what are our unique attributes? What makes us different than those competitive alternatives, right? Then finally, what is the value of those key attributes? Like, what kind of value do these potential customers place on those differences, right? So then you have a very sort of structured position in the market. Who would they use besides you? What do you offer that's different? What is the value? And who is the subset of people who actually cares about those things, right? And that's an April Dunford. She's awesome. She has a book called Obviously Awesome. She does a lot of positioning workshops for folks on the West Coast, but it really replaced that Mad Lib positioning. I don't know if you guys have ever written a positioning statement, right? To this group of people, we offer these promises because of why, but think about that. It's like a Mad Lib. It's just making a lot of assumptions. Yeah. So our strategy and positioning is very rooted in data. And I think you really need to figure out who you are, what you offer, what you're going to tell this group of people who cares about your product. And then you have sort of the basis to actually go out and market, and then try and test and iterate and start to see where you can acquire customers or clients at an acquisition cost that makes sense, right? You have to understand your own cost structure until you can understand what an acceptable acquisition cost is.
So what I'm hearing is like the things you mentioned are pivotal to being successful in the market, because that's going to influence your message. It's going to influence how you try to reach out and all these kinds of things. Do you run into businesses though that really don't? Let's take a step back. Do you run into businesses that haven't spent the time to even know, or maybe their business is zero different? Like they have a plumbing company and they haven't like figured out how to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Do you then go back and say to them, listen, you guys need to figure out a way to be different? Like you have to, maybe it's we'll be there in 30 minutes, or your plumbing is free, or I don't know, whatever it is. Like, right. Do you see that a lot, and have people given that adequate time to even think of how they are and who they are as a business before we even talk about the marketing strategy?
Sure. Well, we're a consulting firm, so people don't call us when things are going well, typically. Something has prompted them, and it could be, and in many cases, we're growing, and a one-person in-house marketing team with 2 freelancers will not work. And you'd be surprised, guys. I mean, we do a lot of work in the multi-location and franchise space that they'll have a $25 million company and have one person who's scrambling to keep up to support the franchise network, right? So
Wow.
people often will call us at that point. It's usually the 40 location mark. Once a franchise has built 30 to 40 locations, they will call, right? So absolutely, that work hasn't been done when people call us. And we actually require it because we can't do great work without putting the roadmap together. And you can't even put together a plan unless you understand your position in the market. And what's interesting about what we do is we sit in the C-suite of our clients because in a digital first environment, marketing owns the customer experience. They encounter you on your website. They encounter you through Google. They encounter you not so much through the phone anymore, right? Or in a print ad or, in some cases, radio, we do that. So we will go and say, you know what? You may need to pivot here to create some differentiation in a market. Or you're competing in a space that you don't really belong in. If you pivot to this side, we see some blue sky for you. So absolutely, we do that work with them.
Okay. Well, because it seems like a lot of people will not only miss that component of their business, so now it makes their marketing that much more difficult. Or to your point of, let's say they have that, they haven't really put in the time to figure out how to utilize and leverage that for successful marketing. Does your firm help them with the actual, what do you guys help them figure out the answers to all the questions that we just discussed briefly a few moments ago? Or are you actually doing the implementation? What does that look like?
We do both. So we call it foundational work. I don't know if that's what it's called, but that's what we call it. So I should come up with some clever, we are a branding firm too. So I should, I should probably name that and come up with something a little bit more exciting than that. But I think it's really important to do positioning. From that, you can do a messaging blueprint. And it's incredible. It's funny, we're rebranding a wastewater and water conveyance company that just sold a large stake to a private equity firm in Central Quarter, US. And it's amazing how creative you can be with wastewater and water conveyance, but also to understand who the other players. Yeah, I didn't know that it was called that. Large diameter pipe, boring and tunneling. And with marketing, it's the discipline, right, guys? I can get excited about large diameter pipe or excited about Calvin Klein or boats. To me, it's the discipline and the practice. So we do that work and then we do the implementation on top of it. I think a lot of business owners make assumptions about why people work with them. And it's really important. Any company can go in and have, a third party or a consultant or someone interview 3 to 5 key clients and ask, why did you choose this company? What about them stood apart from what you were seeing in the market or with your other options? And they'd be surprised. Contractors, for example, my business partner tells a story about a contractor who thought that his work was why everyone hired him and how he scaled his business. And when they went and interviewed key customers who were satisfied with them, it's because they kept the job site so neat and were so organized and great communicators. It wasn't about his craftsmanship after all.
So that could be a huge strategic mistake to focus on his craftsmanship and his marketing if he hadn't taken the step to find out really what. And so in a case like that, let's say that. So what I'm hearing, number one, is you need to know as a business owner why people are really working with you. And so you need to take the time or hire somebody to take the time and go find that out. And if it's not what you think it is, would you incorporate now? So you mentioned the things that he was really being hired for. Would you now incorporate that into the messaging and the marketing?
Absolutely. Because then it's, we make your life easier. We are organized and we do what we say we're going to do. We deliver on time, on budget in a way that's not disruptive to your life. Here it shows samples of the job site in progress and the neatness of it and the organization of it. And because that's a big deal for a contractor and the disruption it causes in a person's life. We've been the outsourced marketing team for Carolina Skiff and Sea Chaser boats for the last 3 years. They have one person in-house who runs all of marketing and sales, and Wild Coffee is their outsourced team. So we do CMO strategy, we do all of their social media, their design. And they came to us and said, well, we want to be a lifestyle brand like Yeti, like Coca-Cola, but the challenge was they were selling boats all the time. Look at this model. Look at the LS. Look at this. And it was all boats, boats, boats. But what they were missing was their boats enabled people and families to have a really amazing time on the water.
Right. Connection.
And what that meant, it's that connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is really important not to always be selling or product, but understand what effect your business has on people. Even with wastewater and water conveyance, it's delivering water to remote areas. It's allowing progress and growth in Texas and Oklahoma, right? It's not just we lay pipe really well on budget and on time, but what are the impacts that you're having to your customer, your community? So try to connect bigger and try not to be so myopic. We call it marketing myopia, that you're just pushing and selling all the time. Think about the impact that you're having, the connection you have with customers, and then who they are and what you offer that's different.
Hey, we'll get right back to our episode, but before we do that, we want to tell you about something super special and important that I want to make sure you know about, and that is our Life in Air events. There are two in particular that I want to draw your attention to. One is called the Get a Life Getaway, and we've been doing this for almost 15 years now. Peter and I have been doing this together for about 8 years together, and then we have our Business Builder Workshop. And this is why it's so important, because if you don't have the ideal life you want, guess what you need? A vision. A vision is something that we create at the Get a Life Getaway. And listen, it takes us a full 3 days to do that. And so we've been doing this for so long. We've refined the process. We've perfected it. We've walked almost 10,000 people through this process, and we want to show you this process. Now, yeah, you could probably try and do it on your own, but why would you try and reinvent the wheel? Let the experts, let us hold you hand in hand through this process. Peter and I teach these personally. You're getting this right from us. And that's the first part of this equation. Now, the second part is like, hey, let's say you decide that you want to work 20 hours a week and you need to make $100,000 to live your vision. Well, guess what? We teach you at the Business Builder Workshop. Exactly that. We will walk you hand in hand and show you our proven process to remove you from your business, to help you make the money you want, to enable you to own your business rather than have it own you. Peter, these events are awesome, man.
Oh yeah, we do these throughout the event, throughout the years, and we're doing them throughout the country. So head over to one of these events, because you'll be surprised how amazing it is to write your vision for your life. I wish somebody would have told me this 10 years ago to do that. When I came here to this country, I had no freaking clue what a vision is, whether to actually write it. So the fact that you're sitting here on this podcast and hearing this message, I would encourage you that this is something that you would go ahead and do that sooner than later. So how do they go about doing that, Vojo?
Well, and Peter, not only that, but we have a very special offer for them. Because you are a loyal podcast listener, I know you're tuning in every single week, hanging on every word. You've given us reviews, ratings, thumbs up, told your parents about it, your mom, your dad, your dog, your neighbor. We are giving you a 50% off, 50% off special offer. So you'll go and choose either the Business Builder Workshop or the Get a Life Getaway. Like Peter said, we do these all over the country. We do about a half dozen of these events per year. And when you check out, after you choose which event you want to attend, then you will enter the promo code PODCAST. PODCAST. Podcast is your promo code. You'll instantly get 50% off. And we will see you at an event soon. Now, here's my advice. Don't wait to attend this. Don't wait to register. Put it on the calendar now. Go right now. Pause the podcast. If you have to, go open a browser, go to lifeinair.com, enter that podcast promo code at checkout, and we will see you at an event soon. Let's get back to the episode.
Well, so I'm hearing that a lot of that, what you're talking about when it comes to marketing, is knowing your customer and listening to their customer, right? Like in that boat example, it's not about the boat, it's about the connection. It's about the time that they get to spend together. So knowing your client is like a gold mine in this whole equation, right?
Right. Absolutely. Knowing your client and knowing who you are and why they value what you offer that's different than your competitive alternatives, right? Why do they care? Who are they? Why do they care? And then you match your messaging to those needs. And right, in a post-COVID world, I think a lot of the veneer has been stripped off of marketing and sales. I think people really started to connect with what was meaningful. We are the outsourced team for a company out of Atlanta called Dapper and Dashing, and they have 6 tuxedo rental brands. Some of them are 60 years old, really incredible brands like Al's Formal Wear in Texas. And the wedding industry has been challenged, obviously, with COVID. And this year, 2023, we thought there was all this pent up demand. But what's happening is weddings are down, first of all, from their own COVID issues, right? Couples deciding not to get married. So you're seeing it in the engagement ring industry, bridal industry, but it's been stripped back to people doing less formal events because they have really gotten into the meaning of what the wedding and making that promise is about. So it's not for them so much about the tuxedo. It's about just being there and being in this event, in this environment. So how do we as marketers try to grab market share? There's plenty for us to get. So we're trying to connect with it. It's about the celebration, and having really good photos in an Instagram world. So that still matters. So there is still a little bit of that, right?
And that's an ongoing conversation with that client, right? I mean, it's not like you figure it out once. You constantly have to have this two-way conversation going back and forth.
Especially since we get leads 2 years before a wedding in many cases. So how do you bring them along that journey in a funnel with a cadence that makes sense? And to your point earlier, Jason, about 7, 9, 15 contacts, our number is 7 to 9 in our belief system at Wild Coffee. But we like it on multiple platforms, right? We like to market to them on streaming. We like to market to them with direct mail in some cases. Email, still a 36 to 1 return on investment. Every dollar spent, $36 in return. So what's amazing is in marketing is we have so many options. And there is so much data out there, but just make sure that you're connecting with them in a way that's meaningful and meets their needs and not in a very salesy way.
So when you mentioned this, I have so many questions, but I'll try to keep them sorted here. When you mentioned, you mentioned the medium, you mentioned email, when you're surveying your existing clients, who you like, by the way, because I also could see how you could have some clients you don't like, and maybe you don't want to find out why they hired you because you might attract more of them. Do you recommend just asking them as part of the survey, so what do you finding out their preferences for communication as well somehow, or is that not something that you
with us, you mean, or with clients?
Yeah,
or with their customers?
If you're their customers, so if the business owner is trying to figure out, gosh, are they gonna do I just try direct mail? Do I try radio ads, or am I doing Facebook retargeting? How do they start to figure out? Is it truly just random testing, or are there any indicators that they can use to maybe give a shot at a couple first to give it a try?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask. So the persona work is really important. In the case with Carolina Skiff and Sea Chaser, we developed personas based on some Personix research we use, and now we have really incredible data platforms that are not palatable for everyone, but your cell phone company is is watching you. So we know where people go, but we also know what platforms they use. So we will create personas because not every customer looks alike in most cases, right? You may have the retiree on lakes in the Southeast who really like hardworking boats. And then with Sea Chaser is a younger generation. So you have to go to where they are.
Okay.
Right? Brides are on TikTok and Instagram, not so much Pinterest anymore. But they want creative that's real. They don't want to be sold. And social proof with millennials and Gen Z is very important. They rely on reviews more than anyone else does. They want to know what their peers and other influencers are saying about a product. They don't want to hear because they don't trust the way that maybe we had to when we were growing up. So they want it vetted out there. So even review programs and making sure you're asking, just doing good so that you can receive good, So.
Well, and so when you say, you mentioned a couple of times now not being salesy and just putting messages out there, what does that look like? Are you saying that, for instance, if you're going to do a market, is most marketing, would you say, and how do you differentiate between brand marketing and then sales marketing? Because it seems like sometimes, sometimes it is to build rapport and trust and social proof, and other times it's we got this special sale going on.
Sure.
Is there some sort of ratio, or how do you start to kind of know how to weave these two together?
Well, first, that's a great question. First of all, social media should not really be promotional unless you have something really good to offer and it's occasional and temporary. If you're using social media as a primary sales channel, that's not why people are there. And then how do you get, why would someone follow a brand anyway? It's to be entertained. It's to be delighted. It's to be surprised. It's to be informed. It's not to be sold. Email is a more appropriate medium, for, informing, delighting, but then offering something. Because if someone has given you their email address, for me, that's an explicit trust. Thank you, because we all guard our personal information very closely in a personal and a B2B environment. So I better offer you something great in return for you giving me your email address. So I think there you can be sort of more salesy. I also think that we support a lot of business to business companies. And so how do you support B2B teams or business development teams in a B2B environment in a way that's not intrusive to other business people? I mean, I don't know how many cold emails you both receive every day.
Yeah.
Nothing. Zero. Yeah.
Nobody wants to sell anything to you.
Nobody.
Peter?
Nope.
You're
Especially
off the
my
market.
spam folder. There, it's completely empty.
So we don't do that, right? We don't do cold emails. We do permission based. We don't buy lists. And so for us, it's very much a trust thing. So understand where you're talking to them and speak in a language that's appropriate for that medium and that person at that time.
Got it. I love that.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what kind of effort in terms of either time or money should a business owner consider devoting towards marketing? Is it, hey, 10% of our profits should go back? Are there general guidelines?
Sure.
How do we start to actually, and how big of a team do we need? Like how many hours? Like how does someone start to figure out, are they in the right ballpark for their marketing efforts?
Sure. Well, it's usually 2 to 3%
Okay.
of top line revenue.
Okay.
That's usually budget, right? So that's media budget, actual spend. As far as the staffing, which I consider outside that number, I think it's really important to have someone to analyze what you're doing or analyze your business plan if you're just ramping up a startup and really sort of dive in with a high level and lots of experience to say, this should be your roadmap. This foundational work, your brand is solid or the brand needs work. Right? This is the messaging blueprint and the basis for everything you're going to do, whether it's organic social media, your website. I really say, look at your owned media first and have an expert look at that and then start to develop plans. We believe in starting small and testing. I would never say, okay, let's put, $500,000 a year into radio. And it's small iterative tests to understand, are you pulling in? We stopped a campaign in a B2B environment last week because the conversions weren't happening and the time on page wasn't long enough. So we stopped it right away and said, you know what? We're going to redo these landing pages and we're going to A/B test them and we're going to start again. And then we're going to stop if it's not working. So we don't just let things run or, we really, really believe in treating our clients' money as though it's our own. So I say start small in 2 to 3 areas, see how that pulls, but really focus on that foundational work. I bet you a lot of business owners haven't been to their mobile site in a while.
Yeah.
Just to pull up your site on your phone and say, have any sort of plugins changed or anything with WordPress that it's displaying, right? Even test your contact form. And is your social, we believe that consumers, whether B2B or B2C, use social media to vet companies. So even if you're a roofing company, an electrician, people will look at your Instagram just to see if you're alive and vibrant. So, it may not be your primary channel of generating business, but show that you're active. And I think that's how people are using social.
Got it. And so are you saying, you mentioned 2 to 3%, is that that's like an ad spend or a print cost? So if you have a $100,000 company, let's say you're generating $100,000, you're a small, one man, one woman show, you should plan on spending $2,000 or $3,000 a year on that actual print cost plus the labor. Is that, am I understanding that?
Yes, plus labor. Yeah. And you have to do what makes sense for you, right? We're averaging, tuxedo rentals average between, I don't know. Do you guys know how much it costs to rent a tux? When's the last time you did it?
I just wear the t-shirts that have the tuxedo imprint on
Figures.
it.
You have something to do with Duke, right? So that tells me everything.
Right. That's true, right?
Sorry. my Tar Heel jab had to go
Just
in
came
somewhere.
in, right? Yeah, I got that one.
So,
I don't know what's going on right now.
Just smile, Peter. Just sit there and smile.
Yeah, it's a Southeastern thing.
Right.
I guess so. Yeah, I'm in Michigan, so yeah.
So it's it really depends on what you sell your product for too, is what an acceptable acquisition cost. If If you look at your cost of goods on a $250 tuxedo rental, you can get to what your acceptable acquisition cost is and then build a bottom-up budget from there too. Sort of a general rule has always been a small percentage, but if you know that your return on ad spend is really high, then you can adjust your budgets accordingly. You just have to really look at what your costs are per sale or per engagement.
Okay. And is there a point, like, would you say there's a certain business size where it starts to make sense to hire or bring on a consultant like yourself? Like, so for instance, like, and I have no idea, what those things cost, but if is somebody who has $100,000 business, is bringing someone on board like you viable and even recommended at that point? Or you're like, no, you really need to be at like 500 million, like plus, like, how does that?
We look at our sweet spot between 5 and 100. Okay. And so I know that's a very wide range.
5 million,
5 million to 100 million. You'd be surprised. In some cases, there may be a 1 or 2 person marketing team. But what's interesting in 2023 about marketing is that in-house teams are required to cover so many skill sets that how do you even build it, right? There's SEO, there's paid media, there is long-form copywriting, short-form copywriting, organic social, paid social, branding, strategy, so PR in many cases, right? How do you possibly hire for that? And it's why we exist, because we believe every company deserves and needs a CMO, just not full-time. It's not viable. CMOs are expensive. So that strategy piece really makes sense. But when you're doing 5 million, it may be time, right? There are companies doing 80 that have an in-house person and we supplement them. So the CEO will say, hey, can you help my marketing person with strategy? And then can you be a regular outsourced fractional team? So you can get all 11 skill sets, but not on a full-time basis. So we'll assemble custom teams. That makes sense.
So I got a question for you, because let's say I'm a business owner, an entrepreneur listening to this podcast, and I'm hearing, oh my God, this is so much stuff I need to do. Like, where do I go? What do I start? And like, she seems overwhelming, right?
A lot of people say that, Peter.
What's that?
A lot of people say that.
Yes. What would you say to them, like the top 3 things that they should look at? I mean, we brought a lot of information on this podcast, like top 3 things that this business owner should be looking at right now.
First, your Google listing, right? Google cares what your Google My Business listing looks like for your company or your business. Are there photos? Is the information complete and up to date? Do you make the user who's looking for a service like yours, do you make it easy for them to find you, and is it thorough? That's the first place I would start. Second place, look at your owned media, which are all the media that you create and you own, and audit that, right? Are there 3 things that a user can know to do when they reach your website? That's our role. What 3 things? Is it call you? Is it click to learn more? Is it to buy something? Is it to fill out a contact form? And are those easy? An example are the tuxedo rental sites. We want them to book an appointment. We want them to see the assortment of product. And then we want to give them a phone number, because we're finding that a lot of people are still calling. Those are the 3 things. So look at your owned media. And then if you have them, really take a look at your social channels. Has that fallen off your radar? Because people are looking to see that your company is alive. Okay, one more. And one is to really
bonus
points to really to do some thinking about your customer. Do you understand how you're different from your competitive alternatives? Who else they would use? Do you understand what makes you unique? And are you talking about that on your owned media? Like, even setting aside the marketing for now. Does your website communicate to the people who care how you're different and why they should care? And the 3 things you want them to do.
Awesome. I love it. So I think these are great. You can take action on it right now as you're listening to it. Go back to your businesses and take those action steps. So I want to switch the conversation a little bit, because one of the things that I love having conversation with people is our failures, our mistakes, because those tend to help us tremendously in business if you look at it from that perspective, right? So my question to you is, what's your maybe top 2 favorite mistakes in marketing that has helped you tremendously with your company or with your clients or anything like that, that someone can look at and maybe implement?
Sure. Understand your pricing structure, right? I think a lot of us, when we're first starting out, are humble We don't have a lot of experience in this business. Despite my 25 years in marketing when I started Wild Coffee with Solomon, I didn't price it in a way that was commensurate with the value I provided clients and the value in the market. We underpriced. And, I think sometimes we still do, but I'm interested in long-term relationships that are viable with clients. And you can always add to it, right? You can upsell if you're selling products and you market to your current customers, right? You can upsell them. So enter into a market where you price it well, but that you're really understanding the financials of your business. The second, and it's not related to marketing, is especially in a professional services business like ours, a consulting firm, is to have financial modeling that helps you understand exactly what your costs are, what your value is, and running the financials, right? I know by person on the team what it costs us all in to hire them, to retain them. I know how that compares to the rates at which clients are paying us for which person on the team. So we, as a 20-person company, have a very, I would like to say, sophisticated view of our financials that I wish I would have done in year one. Sometimes we're just sort of the momentum catches us and the wheels start turning and we know that we're doing it and we're growing, but we don't have outside expertise to look at the financial model. And we hired a fractional CFO. So we're actually walking our own talk. I'm an outsourced CMO and now we have an outsourced CFO because I believe in the outsourcing model wholeheartedly.
Awesome. So let me ask you this. Why would knowing those numbers matter to you in year one? Because I wish I would have done in year one.
Because I would have priced better, leading back to the first point. Yeah, I would have understood the costs better to understand, did I need to raise capital? What does bootstrapping really look like? What are the margins by client, by person, by hour, by service? So now I know what parts of our business are the most profitable, and then you can scale that part, right? If you know you have a certain high margin product, sell more of it. That would sort of drive your marketing strategy too, right? I know what type of projects that we love, first of all, because I think that's very important that the team loves the clients, loves the work. But I know how I can juice margins and bottom line profitability with what types of projects. I was flying blind a little bit about that in the first year because we were just trying to sort of bring in anyone we could. Also, we had a list of COVID clients that we took on during COVID because we were all trying to survive. So we've been able to sort of cycle that out. And those were low margin, low profitability clients, but they kept the top line revenue going. So I think we've all done it somewhere.
You do what you got to do.
Well, no shame.
Amy, this is amazing. Like, you dropped some real gold in this episode, and I'm so thankful for you. Where do people learn more about what you do?
Sure. So we're at wildcoffeemarketing.com. And then we actually publish some pretty robust content as well on LinkedIn under Wild Coffee Marketing. And I'm Amy Anderson at Wild Coffee if anyone wants to reach me.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you for being on the Life Inner Show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Man, I'm gonna have to look past the Duke, UNC thing. That was an awesome interview.
Listen, all I want right now is like wild coffee. I don't know if such a thing exists, but I feel like I want some wild coffee. I don't know.
Right, man. So a few things about marketing, man, and like I feel like most business owners so underappreciate marketing, and they're intimidated by it, and they're overwhelmed. They're like, I don't have time to do it, or I don't have the money, or I don't know how to do it, and like. So I feel like a lot of the tips she gave are like really tangible things that business owners can start with. The thing that I think is so powerful that she mentioned is really knowing one of the things, she said many, but one of the things is like really knowing your customer and why they hired you and how they perceive you, not how you perceive yourself, but how do they perceive you as different from your competitors. And if you have 5 clients, you have that information. If you have 5,000 clients, you have that information. And so I think that's a super valuable component of running a successful marketing campaign to really figure out.
Yeah, I mean, going back to those past clients, and I would say not only the good clients, the satisfied clients, but looking at some of the ones that were not so satisfied, asking them, like, what was the reason for that, right? But I think those clients will tell you tremendously, like in the example, like she mentioned with the construction company, right? He thought he was the one who was performing such a great job, and that's why. And the clients hired him because he was clean and kept it nice and all that kind of stuff. Now your marketing angle shifts in order to help connection with those clients, and they're going to end up probably more people will end up hiring him.
Yeah, dude. Well, that's right, because you're leaning into your strengths. You're leveraging the things you're good at and your unique variables and character to get away from how you think you're being perceived and to actually being able to do that in a way with your marketing that resonates with your ideal client and your customer.
Yeah, and you're aligning what you're really good at, what you're going to, with their needs, right? What they truly want. Like with the boat example you talked about, right? It's not about the boat. It's about the connection, the spending time with the family and having those experiences out on the boat, those kinds of things, right? So when you start looking from that perspective of knowing your client, exactly what they're looking for, what are their needs kind of a thing are, and then what are your strengths, your positioning, how you can align yourself between those two things, all of a sudden those clients, I feel that they feel like you know them, and they're like, this guy gets me, this company gets me. Yeah. So I want to do business with them.
Well, that's another point too. She mentioned that you just kind of brought up is like, don't focus on what you do. Focus and make the connection and connect the dots for your audience as to why that matters, why it is important. What's the connection to the feeling that they're going to get or the experience of hiring you? And when you can delve into the emotional side of that from your unique positioning, like that's the magic formula. Like that's when you can make people feel something as a result of your specific niche or the thing you're really good at. That's going to make an impact.
Yeah. Another thing that I really like that she brought up, and I think this is in today's world is so important, is being real, being authentic. At least that's what I got out of this is, you don't need to make a, $50,000 video production thing. Just be authentic with your client. And I think that shows, maybe just how many of us have seen videos that we really connect with, that just this person taking your phone and putting in front of him and shooting the video right then and there kind of a thing, right? Yeah. So notice that I think authenticity, the being real matters a lot more to people right now, what she said after COVID and things like that. And I believe that.
Yeah. Yep. Totally get it. Man, awesome interview. Amy Anderson with Wild Coffee Marketing. Check her out. If you enjoyed this episode, if you liked it, give us a thumbs up, give us a rating, leave us a review. Tell someone about it. Like you listen, you're part of our marketing team. You, the listener, like help us reach more people, because the more we do, we can all. And by the way, isn't it cool when you share something awesome with somebody else? Because it's like you see an awesome movie and you tell your friends about it, right? And so if you ever have an episode that you really, really enjoy, share it, because now not only is it really cool to share that, but you can talk about it. You guys can collaborate on it. You go back and forth and brainstorm ideas, and like you can help each other.
Right on.
Yep. All right. We will see you next week, everyone. Take care.